So I had this idea, July. I've had your books and things for 10, 12 years, never picked them up until October. Okay. So I had this idea. I'm like, great idea, brilliant, love it.
All right.
Didn't do anything.
But let's talk about this. So we want you to focus just for a moment on the feeling of the moment of that great idea.
Yes.
And we want to explain to you what happened.
Yes.
So your vortex has been churning it. In other words, it's been growing. They're ready for you. So then, for some reason, probably unknown to you, you were in the receptive mode. Bam! You got the idea.
Right.
But you're not yet mastering being in the receptive mode, so it didn't last. But you know that feeling of it when it came? That feeling is sustainable. It just takes a little bit of practice. That's all.
Right.
That's all. You follow all of that?
So, in meditation, all the things that you wrote about, in meditation it got even more clear. I pulled this piece and I'm like, oh, that's it. So I got that, I researched it, I did all this, and didn't act on it. Okay.
Well, it's all right. When you're in the receptive mode long enough and you've sustained it long enough, your acting on it is undeniable. When you've found that receptive mode and the ideas occurred and you've maintained it for a while, you can't not act. So if you didn't feel like acting, all it means is you didn't maintain that. You probably this. I want it. Can I do it? I'd like to do it. I don't know. And research will do that to you. Mm-hmm. Research will kill your dream every time.
Mm-hmm. It's true. So it was accumulating.
Building?
Yes. Okay. So finally in November, I feel like I get this push, like, we gave you the idea, come on, so I'm like,
never like that. It's never like that. It's
well,
never like that.
Here's my idea push. My idea push is like, it's an encouragement. It's not a push. It's just like such encouragement.
Momentum.
Yes.
Momentum.
Okay, so I did it. I acted on it. I did it. I got the supplies. I got this. I got that. So here's my question.
Didn't turn out right. Didn't turn out well yet. Esther 2 is coming to really understand receptive mode and receptive mode. In other words, the receptive mode from the momentum of everything that's in her vortex, and the receptive mode from the momentum of unwanted things. So, not long ago, she was at a new house that she's purchased in another state. And it's a big property, and there were so many things to do. Lots of things that she didn't know when she bought it. She said afterward, if she'd known all of those things, she might not have purchased it. She's glad she didn't know those things because she wouldn't have purchased it, and she's glad she purchased it. So you're sort of following the train of her thinking. So now it's time for her to leave. It's time for her to get on the road. There are a series of events, and she needs to be in another place to do those events. So it's time for her to leave, and there was no one standing there to supervise what was ongoing. So she was feeling shortage of time, shortage of spreading herself too thin. She was in the receptive mode of overwhelmment. And from that receptive mode, she got a great idea. A man walked in who had been working there, and he presented himself and said, I was wondering if you need someone to kind of stick around and oversee some things. And Esther thought, well, this is guidance from heaven. This is really a good idea. And so she said, let me think about it. She thought about it for a very brief period of time and said, yes, let's do this. Turned out to not be a good idea at all. Not even close to a good idea. A rather terrible idea, which perfectly matched how she was feeling. She was overwhelmed. She was overextended. It turned out exactly like it felt at the beginning of it. Then, later, in the same place, Esther's up here, soaring, thrilled, in love with life, in love with this place. And another person presented himself to her. And she said, yes. And oh, is that turning out wonderfully? And so, just because it feels like inspiration is coming, it's really helpful for you to acknowledge what was the vibrational stance from which this got started. And if you look back on your experiences, you can tell. In other words, it's better to do it with things that are happening now. But you've had experiences where if you will think about it and realize what was going on in your life and how you were feeling, why that relationship turned out the way it did, because you hear about rebound relationships. In other words, your heart is broken, and so you go, and then everything's that way. What mode of reception are you in? Doesn't that explain everything to you? Or doesn't it? Explains everything to us.
So when the idea came, it was like downstreaming, it was live streaming, it was...
Doesn't mean it wasn't a good idea. When something seemed like a good idea and then later it doesn't turn out so good, if you're sure that you were here, that it was flowing, all it means is, you know what buyer's remorse often is? Buyer's remorse is not that what you bought was the wrong thing for you to buy. It just means you're not in the same vibrational place you were when you decided to buy it. All it indicates is a fluctuation in your vibration or in your attention. You can return to that.
So here's what happened. So I felt so good about it. I did align. I absolutely aligned with it. I absolutely loved it. I work as a counselor. I help people. It was in alignment with what I do. And I said, this is good. And going back to that question, it was, so how do you help people feel joy? How do you help people get into the garden, into the vortex? And I use a lot of oils and scent. And I was putting together like positive affirmations and with that. And with the smell, with the scent, people could go, oh. And it felt like they just got into the vortex. That's how it was coming and coming and coming.
Well, we don't disagree that they were. We don't disagree that you can induce conditions and get people to focus. And if you put them in an environment where they're not focused so much on other things and you introduce things to their sensory perceptions, that's a very good tool. We should add that to the list of meditation and slumber and naps and all of that, because as you're distracting them from the things that are bothering them, but the question is that sustainable? Can they stay on your table all day, every day? Or does that condition have to change? You see what we're getting at?
No.
What we're getting at is, so many people are living a sort of conditional love. If the condition is right, then they feel good. But if the condition is something that they don't want, then they feel bad. So they have no control over the way they feel. What we're wanting you to realize is that if you care about your emotions and you practice it a little bit, you can tap into this good feeling place no matter what the conditions are. That's what unconditional love is, that has been talked about for such a very long time. Unless you're unconditional in it, then the conditions are going to take you up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. But once you master what it feels like, and you can go there because you mean to, because you can close your eyes and take yourself there, or you have enough momentum that you rarely leave that place, then you've got it, you see. It's an interesting thing, especially for those like you, so many in this room, who are teachers and uplifters and counselors. In order for you to be of value to anyone else, you've got to have connection with who you really are. That leverage that creates worlds is flowing through you. One who's connected to that energy stream of well-being, that replenishing stream, is more powerful than millions who are not. In other words, when you tap into that, you are very influential and very productive. When you are counseling, even in this situation, you're not convincing us of your problem, because we're here. No matter how many runs at it you take in this conversation, we still remain here. But if you're not solidly there, then someone like you could talk a counselor into joining them in their struggle and trouble. You see what we're getting at? So that's what we mean when we say you got to get out ahead of it. You got to get out ahead of it. You got to be sure you're there before you introduce yourself to anything that might take you there. You got to be solidly in your alignment. That's what true compassion is. True compassion is being in sync with the source within you, so that you can focus upon the trials and tribulations of someone and not take you down. True compassion is being able to see them where they are without it causing a dip in your vibration. There have been many teachers like this, but as you stood before someone like Jesus, dripping your illness, he did not see your illness. He knew your wellness, and he knew it so powerfully that your illness could not even exist while he was focused upon you. He dominated the energy field around you so profoundly that as you believed in what he knew, you could not have illness and wellness at the same time. And then he said, go forth and tell no one, because he knew you're going to go home and talk about the same things that you were talking about and talk yourself out of the adjustment in vibration, you see. Helpful?
So part of what I do is service and to help people. That's what I've come to do. And then you're talking about, I think.
We're saying you got to tap into something or you've got nothing to give. And if you let them take you out of it, in other words, this receptive mode that you can master is a replenishing mode. It just continues to replenish you. And it's normal, of course, to take your dips. That's what we say. Step one is a normal thing to return to every now and again. But as long as you understand what the process is, as long as you understand how to tap back into it, then you just keep replenishing. You see, someone can get tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and really feel wonderful, and you can see 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 clients in a day, and by the end of the day, you feel worse than any of them, because you've got to stay in the replenishing mode. If you stay in the replenishing mode, then your energy isn't depleted. Then you've got something for the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. But if you're letting conditions get you down, then it's simple. You're not solidly there.
Before I was a counselor, I was a scientist. And so I love...
That explains so much.
Thank you.
So we're going to talk about this briefly here. So you're in the receptive mode and the idea comes. Now, Jerry was going to write a book and now we're writing it with him and for him, with Esther, turning thoughts to things. So here's this vortex that has all of these vibrations in it that are turning to thoughts. And when you're in the receptive mode, you receive the idea. And as you stay in the receptive mode, then another idea and another idea and another idea and another idea as these thoughts turns to things. And that's just this delicious process of thoughts turning to things, thoughts turning to things. And so as you understand that it's thoughts turning to things, the other day a woman said, I want $100,000 because I want to travel. And she saw the $100,000 as the beginning of her travel. And we explained to her, oh, the travel started long before. It started with not traveling and wanting to. The vortex was there. The ideas were building. Then the idea about where you'd like to go. And the money is along the journey. In other words, that's not the starting point of the journey. It's along the way of the journey, you see. And so as you acknowledge that these thoughts are turning to things, but sometimes what happens is people want the thing to exist so that they can think about it. That's what holds science back. They need the manifestation before they're really willing to think about it, rather than letting their thoughts turn to the things. You see what we're getting at? When you're weighing the pros and the cons, scientists keep themselves profoundly in step one as they're evaluating and trying to demand results from a vibration that is scattered. But then every now and again, there's some renegade who is not part of the scientific community, who does not subscribe to needing to have the manifestation before he can acknowledge the existence of something. A scientist very rarely acknowledges the existence in the vortex. So he's not listening for the inspiration from the vortex. He wants all the proof out there. Isn't that good to know? So your scientific background serves you in that you are really good at focusing, but it doesn't serve you in that you weigh the pros and the cons and the pluses and the minuses, and that's why you didn't, in your example, sustain your vision. But you will now.